Hello, sleepy voyagers. Tonight your mission drifts farther than ever before to the realm of Saturn, the jewel of our solar system. Beyond the chill of deep space, rings of ice and rock shimmer like a cosmic crown, waiting to welcome you. Before we set out, tap like so this journey finds you again, and subscribe to join our crew for nightly voyages. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. I love seeing our galaxy of listeners shining from every corner of the world. Now take a moment to dim the lights, lower your screen brightness, and, if you like, turn on a gentle fan for that soft background hum. This isn't just a story, it's your calm unfolding among the stars. When you're ready, close your eyes. You've arrived at Saturn. Saturn's rings, spanning hundreds of thousands of kilometers, are younger than the dinosaurs' extinction, yet timeless enough to soothe your mind tonight. Within the first few moments of this voyage, you'll see why icy fragments from distant moons form luminous arches that feel endlessly calming. The greatest surprise? These ancient fragments aren't just beautiful, they connect directly to hidden oceans, raining material into the giant world below. Now imagine closing your eyes as you float inside this slow, eternal cycle of creation and renewal. You expect turmoil when the platform eases into Saturn's orbit. With billions of icy fragments circling ahead, the mind predicts collision and chaos. Yet what greets you first is not sound or fury, but a calm so deep it feels almost unnatural. The vast rings arc silently across your view, broad and motionless at this distance, like a still horizon. As you drift closer, the silence continues. No thunder of impacts, no storm of debris, only a world stretched out in composed stillness. Your platform adjusts, pulling you forward with a slow and steady path toward the nearest ring. At first, you cannot grasp its scale. The bright arc looks slim, almost fragile, yet as you near, it resolves into something monumental. The plane of light that once appeared thin reveals itself as wide as continents, extending across space longer than familiar landscapes back home. Your journey does not carry you into a storm of colliding boulders. Instead, you enter soft corridors of empty space dotted with ice fragments, each far from the next. What should feel hazardous instead feels serene, and the distance between the drifting grains creates a rhythm like calm breaths. Your thoughts still strain against what your eyes tell you. You expect shards racing at violent speeds, particles grinding into one another, yet these scenes never come. Gravity has arranged something more measured. The gaps between the icy fragments stretch like aisles in a grand library, not empty voids but peaceful spaces that allow each shard its own course. You pass clusters of bright pieces, then glide into clearings where nothing floats for minutes at a time. Nothing touches your platform. There is no sense of danger, only expansion. The rings accept you without hurry. Only now do you begin to understand their true scale. The main ring system extends more than 200,000 kilometers from Saturn's surface, wide enough to hold Earth itself inside that span several times over. And this isn't a single arc of dust and ice. The rings divide themselves naturally into bands. Broad sections lie pressed close together, and between them lie wide, dark cuts, as if entire continents of matter were removed. The Cassini division is one such gap, nearly 3,000 miles wide, creating a separation between brighter regions on either side. To human eyes, it seems like a canyon that stretches around a planet. Yet from within, it is a hollow corridor, shaded but quiet, a marker of how moons tug and sculpt these icy plains. The platform coasts near the denser B-ring, where light shines most brightly. From your place above the plane, the fragments scatter beneath you in thin layers, each aligned almost perfectly flat. They stack not randomly but in sheets, sometimes elevated into ridges more than 2 miles high, reaching upward like frozen dunes. Most of the surface remains level, though, and as your body adjusts, it almost feels as though you are hovering above an ocean that has stilled into silence. Each faint movement, each shimmer, resembles tiny waves caught mid-crest. Floating here produces less a sense of movement than of suspension. Your weight is gone, leaving only a memory of pressure pulling you downward. Instead, you seem held by the design of Saturn's gravity itself, a presence strong enough to rule countless particles, yet measured enough to allow your station to drift in quiet harmony among them. No rockets push you. You do not fall. You exist in free orbit, shepherded invisibly. For a moment, you forget what downward even means. Still, your eyes search for the detail, the substance of the shards themselves. From afar they look bright but vague, as though the light paints a smooth surface. Nearer in, you notice differences. Some pieces shine like polished metal, faces of ice cut clean. Others scatter light unevenly, rugged surfaces interrupted by long shadows. Grains smaller than your hand scatter around the larger boulders, but none rush recklessly. The space between them remains far greater than the size of the pieces themselves. You could stretch your arms and not touch a single one. With every passing minute, the vastness emphasizes itself. You imagine crossing from the innermost reach to the outer limit. To travel across the ring plane would take longer than crossing an ocean by ship. Some bands reach 7,000 times Saturn's diameter, an expanse that reduces your platform to a speck, so slight that imagination can barely capture it. And yet, despite this immensity, calm persists. Your movements remain smooth, steady, without struggle. It is vast like a desert horizon, but it comforts like a quiet lake. This contrast lingers in your thoughts, the mismatch between expectation and reality. You arrived ready for intensity, for the noise of destruction, but instead, the rings grant tranquility. You begin to feel as though the platform itself is afloat above a gentle tide. Whenever clusters of ice shift below, their patterns resemble swells in water, soft crests that rise and fall. Light scatters across them in ways that suggest a surface, though you know none exists there. Still, the impression is strong enough. You are not above a storming belt of fragments, but above an ocean that belongs to no earth. The rhythm of this environment grows even clearer as you drift past different regions. Bright arcs swell outward with so much light that their tone nearly blinds. Then, gradually, darkness stretches in gray lanes. One section ends, another begins. These are natural divisions carved by moons long ago, sculpted by tides of gravity. To float between them is to move between chapters, each one written across thousands of miles. The ring system is not just vast but ordered, and your presence hovers within that order. Time begins to dissolve. The platform carries you forward gently, with no sensation of acceleration. The fragments drift below you with their slow consistency. Patterns reveal themselves, lines where ice seems to drift more densely, emptier lanes that resemble paths across a meadow. The serenity grows thicker the longer you remain. It is not the frozen silence of danger, but a live calm, a living structure drawn from physics, gravity balancing ice, ice reflecting light, and you suspended above the result. As you watch, anticipation rises. It is impossible not to wonder about the fragments themselves, what they hold, and how they capture light. You imagine reaching for one, brushing its surface, feeling the mark of something formed long before your species gazed at the night sky. But still, for now, you only drift. The endless ocean extends across your vision, broad arcs of brightness broken by quiet spaces. All along there is only soothing separation, not crashing impact. The realization settles into your body. For all their mass and immensity, Saturn's rings calm more than they overwhelm. They are not firestorms or crashing maelstroms. They are softer, a suspension of frozen pieces turning forever around their giant host. As your platform glides, the sensation continues that you are sailing across a vast, still sea. Your curiosity shifts now from their layout to their surface gleam. You prepare to look closer, not at distance or scale, but at the shimmer of single particles reflecting the far-off sun. What does sunlight become when it falls across billions of frozen fragments? The answer unfolds slowly, not in bursts or sudden glare, but in drifting cascades of light that seem to move as patiently as the particles themselves. From your platform, the overwhelming arc of rings no longer feels abstract distance. Instead, it surrounds you with points of brightness, each one a small mirror tilting to the sun. They drift like snowflakes, yet unlike snow in wind, there is no rush, no scatter. These fragments descend, if such a term applies, with the calm precision of orbit, each encircling Saturn, each offering the faintest flash to your watching eyes. At first, the light seems soft, almost hesitant, as if too much space separates the source from what the particles can reflect. The sun is far, nearly 1 billion miles away, and one might expect its reach to weaken so much that the ice can only whisper it back. You wonder, would these fragments gleam like a polished sea, or fade into dull, unseen dust under the sheer distance? This tension rises in the mind, a question of brightness against immensity. But then the truth becomes plain by the evidence around you. Though your eyes adjust to the dimmer sunlight of Saturn's orbit, the ice gathers and multiplies the shine. Sleek curved fields glow brighter than the sky, as if the rings themselves draw more strength from the starlight than a single source ever could. The rings hold a property known as reflectivity, albedo, a measure of how much light a surface returns compared to what it absorbs. Here, ice dominates, and ice returns sunlight with near perfection. From Saturn's orbit, this means the rings blaze not through added energy, but through countless echoes. Billions of faint returns combine until the entire arc becomes a broadcast, visible from immense distances. What you now float through is not dim snow, but a luminous canvas marked by geometry and chance. The brighter the surface, the stronger the scatter, and the rings stand as one of the brightest objects in the solar system for this very reason. Here among them, individual pieces play their part. A shard rotating slowly might capture light for an instant and scatter it into a streak before it turns back into shadow. A cluster aligned briefly faces the sun and produces a radiant arc that curls like a halo above the platform before dissipating. When clouds of smaller grains pass, they form ripples, waves of reflection that travel like sheets of silk being drawn across an endless floor. This play of many pieces does not overwhelm the eye. Unlike a single beam that blinds, the variety of sizes and angles distributes brightness into countless flickers. Light becomes not a blaze, but a rhythm, a pulse of subtle events across the surface below you. You think of snow on Earth illuminated at night by a pair of headlights. The flakes catch streams of light, scattering them in jagged glimmers before melting back into dark. Multiply that fragile shimmer by billions, extended across distances larger than whole continents, and the image begins to approach what surrounds you now. It is not a static glow, but an active pattern, one fragment bright for seconds, another dim, the whole canvas in motion as slowly as ice in orbit can move. Your gaze follows these patterns long enough that they blur, dissolving into dreamlike movements. Streaks form out of coincidence, then fade. Points cluster into shapes that resemble arcs of woven light, though you know no solid form emerges there. This wandering perception becomes part of the experience. The brain looks for structure, tries to define images, but the reality resists it. The only consistent fact is the endless sequence of reflections, flowing from distant sun to frozen crystal, to your eyes at this slow pace. The more you watch, the more soothing it feels. At no point does a flash pierce sharply enough to disturb your calm. Instead, each glimmer appears as though it were paced to the beat of a slow pulse, arriving at intervals measured for comfort. It does not matter that millions arrive together across the span of rings. From your position, scattered across so much distance, their combination smooths into waves of brightness rather than clashing sparks. These soft pulses act on the mind like a dim lantern in a quiet room, steady enough to orient, but faint enough to invite rest. The platform itself seems drawn in, its surfaces reflecting streaks that shift as though they belonged to it, streaks that bathe the structure in moving arcs. Each time your eyes close, brief red glows remain on the inside of your lids, created by strands of light still lingering after the source fades. This is no dazzle, no strong flood of brightness, but a calming trickle with the persistence of water over stone. Even with awareness of the science behind it, the impact remains almost intimate. The physics that permit such brilliance, from reflectivity of ice to complex division of bands, becomes secondary to the sensation of watching. These bands do more than organize worlds of particles. They create layers of reflection that vary so gradually the light appears to breathe. Brightness rises, darkness interrupts, and the great arc continues. Each transition feels slower than thought itself, slower than the measure of time you know. In this rhythm, your own sense of tension unwinds. Concern about what brightness might mean falls aside. The answer has already come. Here, scattered light does not intrude. It eases. Every new flicker is a guidepost, as if the system itself draws you along paths without need for decision. You find yourself waiting for the next flicker rather than resisting it, letting each one sink deeper and fainter. Part of you now imagines more than seeing. You picture the act of contact, of reaching out to the drifting fragments. Each shimmer tempts like a signal beckoning your hand, as though another sense waits just beyond vision. While the platform continues in its track, the thought remains. The light that gathers in your eyes has already crossed from fragment to body. Perhaps the particles themselves could do the same. The sea of ice continues to scatter, expansive and calm, as if no end lies within reach. Yet the imagination narrows its task. Soon the hand itself must stretch toward a single piece, not to see its reflection, but to know its substance. After endless glimmers across distance, you prepare to move closer. The very act of touch hovers within your reach. You reach your hand slowly into open space and hold it steady, waiting for contact that feels impossible to imagine. There is no atmosphere up here, no air to carry temperature, no medium to pass sound, yet still the thought remains. What would it feel like to touch something inside Saturn's rings? The mind assumes harshness, sharp edges, jagged surfaces, or fragments too large to approach safely. Another assumption follows. Maybe there would be nothing at all, only the cold vacuum, where even the act of touch seems meaningless. But here, as pieces drift close enough, the imagination completes the moment. In the stillness, reaching out feels tangible. You extend your fingers toward ancient ice and brace for sensation. Everywhere around you lies a scattering of material spanning an enormous range. Some fragments are as fine as dust, barely wider than a human hair. Others are scattered blocks, larger than houses, gliding quietly in their scripted orbits. These extremes build the texture of the rings. Grains so small they vanish the instant you blink, and bodies so large they cast faint shadows across the plane. Between these limits lies everything else, from flakes that could rest on your palm to slabs that beat the size of entire streets. What you might touch depends on what drifts close at that moment, and with so many pieces circling together, each encounter feels unique. One grain draws near, hardly visible at first. Your hand waits in anticipation. Then, at last, the brush arrives. It feels less like the stab of ice and more like catching the faint drift of frozen breath on a winter morning. A dust-like coatings slips across your fingertips, leaving only coolness without pressure. Where the mind expected sharp edges, there is only softness, a soft scattering edged against skin. The light touch disappears as quickly as it arrived, a passing flake already gone again into open space. The particles are quiet reminders of history, written over millions, perhaps billions of years. Scientists debate their origin, whether the rings were sculpted from a shattered moon long ago, or whether they formed more recently from collisions that tore a moon's body into fragments. Modern measurements suggest the younger end of the scale, no more than 400 million years in age, but still older than humanity by unimaginable scales. Touching a fragment here means brushing against matter, created deep in time, older than language, even older than most of Earth's landscapes that rise and erode across ages. Each touch feels like a fragment preserved from a story that has no characters left to speak it. As your hand lingers in space, more debris brushes by. Some particles carry the smoothness of frost, surfaces uniform against the skin, breaking no texture. Others feel grittier, rough like a fleck of crushed ice just scooped from a frozen lake back on Earth. There are no sudden jolts, only whispering signals arriving through fingertips, each one registering softer than expectation. Every touch is gone in less than a second, replaced by the next passing fragment. Yet the effect compounds. After only moments of contact, you feel surrounded by an invisible snowfall, every passing bit adding to a sensation of calm. Consider that what touches your palm also rains continually into Saturn itself. Cassini observed ring rain, a slow but steady flow of material descending from the rings into the planet's upper atmosphere. Those faint touches on your fingertips hold more than water ice. Science has shown that the composition includes unusual compounds, a collection of chemicals that hint at the complexity alive within the system. What brushes you in silence here will eventually sink downward into Saturn's clouds, feeding the world beneath with unseen nourishment. This thought settles into your mind with weight. You are not only touching pieces of orbit, you are touching fuel that shapes the life cycle of the planet. The size of the rings allows no uniform experience. In some places, particles gather densely, packed so tightly that your hand might pass through dozens at once if they wandered within reach. In other stretches, emptiness dominates, leaving your fingertips waiting in vain, extended with no contact to be found. This patchwork density adds texture to the entire experience, a rhythm of encounter and absence. Where particles congregate, touches overlap in tiny sequences. Where gaps stretch wide, you wait in stillness, feeling only the memory of ice fading from skin. Up close, the structure reveals its complexity. Vertical ridges surge within certain bands of the rings, sometimes rising more than 2 miles above the ring plane. In those areas, particle density varies like dunes across a desert, only here they are dunes of drifting ice controlled by gravity. Even if your platform hovers above a seemingly flat sheet, your hand moves among layers invisible to eyes alone. Some pieces are low, nearly brushing the platform, while others float higher, arcs above arcs, brushing light across surfaces as they rotate. The rings are not flat disks, but three-dimensional arenas, arranged in tiers by the tug of Saturn and its moons. To reach out here is to reach across strata of hidden pattern. Each moment of contact triggers reflection. Is this fragment from a moon shattered in catastrophe? Is it younger, a frozen remnant carved more recently from gravitational tides? Some pieces are certainly ancient, billions of years in motion, chasing Saturn endlessly as time unwinds. Others might be newer, broken only a few million years ago by some passing impact. You cannot distinguish which is which, but the mystery itself forms part of the sensation. Every touch carries lineage that stretches across cosmic scales, yet offers no clear answer to its beginnings. The longer your hand remains extended, the more natural the action feels. At first you doubted the possibility. There could be nothing, your fingers passing sterile through void. Instead, the fragments remind you of snowflakes. Not snow freshly fallen and heavy, but snow caught in passing gusts, faint, fleeting, vanishing before you register it. And like snowflakes, each brush differs. none repeat exactly. The dust-like quality emphasizes that fragility, leaving the skin with no mark, no temperature sustained, nothing but memory. As you release your hand back toward your lap, the sensation lingers like silence after sound. It was restrained, but undeniable. The icy grains left no cut, no scar, no visible trace, yet your body recognizes the moment as real. Ancient matter crossed into human contact, however light, bridging your presence with the evolution of a planetary system. The rings no longer seem distant structures. They have entered your skin's record, minute touches carrying memory across space. You settle back on the platform, relaxed now, satisfied by the gentleness of what might have been perceived harsh. Instead of jagged cuts or crushing force, the rings offered a touch like soft snow, timeless flakes formed from shattered moons, fragments too old to count precisely yet kind in their fleeting brush. In imagination and in calm, you hold them the way one holds snow in an open palm, small pieces of an infinite cycle, drifting momentarily into human reach. As your hand falls quiet, your ears prepare to lead the next discovery. The silence of space persists, yet beyond it lies something stranger, a resonance, an unseen vibration that instruments once recorded, waiting to be heard again. You shift attention from the touch of particles to the thought of sound itself. Somewhere ahead, Saturn hums. Outer space is silent, yet here above Saturn's rings, your senses tell you otherwise. The silence you expected, the endless vacuum without breath or sound, begins to feel disturbed by something underneath it. A vibration so low and steady it might be mistaken at first for the pulse of your own body, only you slowly realize it is not coming from within. It comes from out there, where silence is supposed to reign. The thought is strange. Saturn, the giant planet of ice and gas, has a voice. The source of this sensation lives in forces hidden from direct sight. Space around Saturn is alive with electromagnetic activity, waves that ripple through plasma, the charged particles carried by the planet's magnetic field. These waves cannot be heard by human ears. There is no air here to carry sound pressure from place to place. Yet spacecraft instruments have shown that these signals exist by picking them up and converting their frequency into audio. Once adjusted into a range your body can perceive, the emptiness is revealed to be full of resonance. This realization raises tension. The logic of space tells you all should be quiet, endlessly quiet. But the experience insists upon another layer. If the vacuum cannot transmit sound, then how can Saturn sing? If silence is absolute here, what makes your platform feel as though it is humming faintly beneath your feet? The answer sits between fact and perception. Fact explains that spacecraft detected radio waves, which were translated into sound files we can hear back on Earth. Perception takes that knowledge and makes it physical, so that in your imagination, the faint hum reaches through metal, into skin, and into thought. The Cassini spacecraft documented these signals while orbiting Saturn. Its antennae reached outward like listening instruments and captured radio frequency bursts tied to the planet's magnetic field. These bursts grow especially active around the auroral regions, where charged particles collide with upper atmosphere and create arcs of energy. Shifted down from radio waves into audible sound, They reveal long tones that rise and fall. They come across not as chaotic bursts or static, but as pulses woven into a low, pulsing fabric of noise. Here on the platform, you imagine the same tones manifesting once more, a reproduction of what spacecraft once recorded in another form. The effect through your body is unmistakable. It resembles vibration more than pitch, a deep hum that does not merely reach ears, but sinks into chest and arms, felt in muscle as much as heard in mind. It is continuous and patient, washing through all that surrounds you from an invisible source. The sensation recalls being underwater when sound travels faster, deeper, resonating through bone. Like the call of a whale carried across miles of sea, Saturn's hum arrives as a low song too broad to have edges. It does not begin or end abruptly. It folds upon itself, looping without break, a tone drawn across minutes like stretched fabric. The rhythm matches Saturn's rotation. The planet spins in a little over 10 hours, and the frequencies mirror this cycle, repeating, falling, rising, then repeating again. To listen here is to notice time stretched differently than on Earth. Hours become signals, rotation becomes resonance. The cycle is a clock with no ticking, only droning currents. And in this slow steadiness lies comfort. The platform vibrates faintly from the imagined sound. Your senses pick it up, as if cradling you directly. Above the auroral regions, the intensity increases, fluctuating in patterns, just as auroras ripple through Saturn's atmosphere. Cassini recorded stronger bursts when it flew through magnetic field lines linked to these shimmering displays. This gives the hum texture. It is not perfectly even. There are softer stretches where the tone retreats, then sudden swells where the resonance grows louder and fuller. From your place above the rings, it comes across like waves rolling through, some gentle, some larger, each rolling past in unhurried sequence. You close your eyes and allow this current to pass through without analyzing it. At first, it feels mechanical, a translation of electromagnetic values into audible range. But the more you consider it, the less artificial it seems. After all, if those same patterns dictate the behavior of charged particles, if they shape how Saturn's auroras form and how its magnetic field holds sway, then the hum belongs to the planet in truth. The sound is not made of pressure like on Earth, but of electric fields pulsing in endless cycles. Even if your ears cannot detect it in vacuum, the resonance is no less real. Time drifts with the tone. Seconds pass unmarked, replaced by the rise and dip of the hum. The effect is hypnotic, not harsh. Nothing jars or breaks the stream. The pattern of Saturn's rotation and auroral dynamics plays like background music designed to lower thought into quieter states. The body sinks to the pacing without effort. Breathing slows. Even heart rate seems to reduce, mirroring the patient roll of unseen waves. It becomes hard to define where the sound ends and your own awareness begins. The more you focus, the more your body starts to match it, until each inhale seems guided by the deep cycles and each exhale folds seamlessly into the rhythm. The sensation that began as tension, hearing something in the silence where nothing should exist, has turned to reassurance. Far from being a contradiction, Saturn's hum feels necessary, an anchor that proves place and guides time within an environment too immense to measure otherwise. This lullaby resonates not in notes and lyrics, but in pure vibration. It belongs to no instrument, yet it offers comfort as music does. The hum underlines the entire system, rings scattering light, moons carving gaps, and gravity shepherding motion. All of it seems bound together by frequency. Your platform, your body, and the world beneath orbit together to an invisible song. Though science acknowledges you cannot hear Saturn directly, in imagination the song plays clearly. A chorus too deep for ears alone now converts into a background heartbeat for space itself. For anyone drifting here, such resonance becomes personal, a single thread sustaining thoughts as awareness begins to soften. Out of silence emerges sound, and from sound comes rest. The tones do not fade, they remain steady, marking rotation, connecting aurora to magnetosphere to suspended traveler. Eventually you recognize that the system has rhythm not only in light and in motion, but in sound. Saturn sings not where air permits, but where fields vibrate, and listening is less hearing than aligning. In this alignment, you rest easier, shifting away from curiosity toward calm acceptance of the deep hum's constancy. Your platform continues to carry you forward. The tone remains beneath, surrounding, joining every fragment outside with a presence you cannot dismiss. Ahead lies structure, not sound. The divisions of the rings themselves, wide gaps carved by orbiting moons. You leave the hum in place as steady foundation and prepare now to follow it into the shifting borders of Saturn's ring divisions. At first glance, the rings look continuous, a single shining band circling Saturn without interruption. From a distance, they appear smooth, like the even rim of a disk carved carefully out of ice. But as your platform carries you from one section to another, the illusion changes. The bright B ring spreads beneath you, dense and full of scattered light, until without warning, the sparkles thin. The familiar stretch of glitter turns faint, then breaks entirely. What was once solid brightness becomes a broad lane of shadow, a gulf where brightness has vanished. Wide chasms of darkness open in the ring plane, so deep and still that they seem carved deliberately. Guided forward, you drift from the edge of the brilliant B ring toward this vast space known as the Cassini division. It is not a wall or a cliff, but a hollow corridor encircling the planet. Your mind still anticipates some barrier rising to meet you. Logic suggests that if one region has ended, another must resist entry, a sheet of debris thick enough to obstruct the path. But when the platform crosses into this opening, there is no impact. Instead, there is less. The sparkle drops away until only scattered specks remain, thin as dust in a quiet room. The emptiness stretches with order, not chaos. Nothing flies at you, nothing collides with the platform. It is not destruction that forms this absence, but design shaped by gravity. Saturn's own moons reach inward with their tugs, and in places their steady pull repeats often enough to influence particles. Over many cycles, these resonances clear specific paths, coaxing debris away from those orbital zones. The Cassini division exists this way. The moon Mimas circles Saturn in a rhythm that links directly with particles at this radius. With each repeated tug, small accelerations shift debris outward or inward until little remains. The outcome is a permanent gap thousands of miles wide, wrapping seamlessly around the planet. The contrast between what you have just left and where you now float is striking. Behind lies the B ring, dense with billions of points that shimmer like scattered stars. Ahead lies an expanse clearer than expected, whose darkness emphasizes how bright the neighboring regions truly are. You start to notice a rhythm in these contrasts. Dense brightness swells like a full page of text, then transitions into quiet blankness, the way one sheet of paper turns before the next begins. In moving across the rings, reading light and darkness, you participate in a rhythm already long established. The Cassini division is not the only opening. There are smaller ones tucked between other rings, variations in density, where moons have gently drawn lines across the system. Some gaps announce themselves through dramatic dark lanes visible from afar, like this one. Others hide more subtly, revealed only when observing patterns in how particles scatter. Even the narrow F ring, lying farther outward, is marked by interruptions that shift constantly under the guidance of nearby moons. Every gap fits within a larger story of balance, each one carved not at random, but in response to predictable cycles of motion. As you look across the width of the Cassini division, the emptiness comes alive in its own quiet way. Sparse fragments linger here, not completely absent but widely spread apart. The glow of the sun catches on occasional pieces, thin beacons suspended in shadow. Where too many sparkles together create a blur, here you can track individual shards, see each particle in isolation. Their slow paths become easier to follow, like watching fireflies spread thin across a dark field, rather than grouping in a swarm. This thinning section strengthens your awareness of scale. On Earth, a gap of space several thousand miles wide is difficult to picture. Here it occupies your sight directly. You cross into shadow for long minutes, the far boundary of the division still a distant lane of brightness, mirroring the band you left behind. The feeling is that of drifting across a wide river, carved through a frozen plain. Behind and ahead, shores glitter with dense reflectivity. Beneath you is broad water made not of liquid, but of vacancy. It is in that vacancy that you sense rhythm again. Silence is not absence, but contrast. Each return to brightness after shadow carries more weight than continuous light ever would. The effect is musical, though no sound accompanies it. The alternation produces structure, dense section, sparse section, dense once more. Saturn's rings do not compose themselves as uniform blankets. They arrange themselves into a symphony of alternating layers, with crescendos of brightness marked by rests carved into their length. Moving farther, you exit the Cassini division slowly, entering the next broad band called the A ring. Here the density climbs again, quickly filling your view with overlapping sparkles. The darkness slips behind. The platform sails over brightness once more, but each return emphasizes memory of the chasm you just passed. Where before you noticed the general shimmer, now you notice gradations, thicker points, thinner lanes. Even within dense zones, gaps appear, faint reminders that structure dominates the entire span. These alternating stretches carry importance beyond simple observation. They tell of Saturn's many moons, each with gravity tuned precisely to alter rings in resonance. They show how a system composed of countless icy particles remains orderly under repeated influence. And they highlight the scale of Saturn's reach, able to empty paths thousands of miles wide through nothing more than invisible tugs occurring in rhythm. The sight holds still another anticipation. Each crossing reveals contrast more sharply, teaching you how brilliant the rings are when observed against shadow. But you know this contrast will reach its most extreme form when viewed edge-on. As distant Earth and Saturn align every 15 years or so, the entire ring system appears to vanish. From this lofty vantage, you will experience that geometry firsthand. The same rings that now stretch broad across your vision will narrow into a thin line, glowing like a single strand pulled tight across sky. For now, the divisions serve as early lessons in contrast, dense against sparse, brightness against shadow. They show the system's rhythm and prepare eye and mind for sharper transformations ahead. You leave the Cassini division behind, ring planes sweeping outward in greater arcs once more, the play of light resuming after the pause of darkness. Yet in memory, the stillness of that chasm remains, accentuating what brightness means within the whole design. The realization grows unavoidable. The rings are not one uniform belt circling in monotony. They are assembled like music, sections divided by silence, their rhythm written by gravity and motion. To cross them is to journey through patterns rather than chaos. Each gap and band functions as stanza and pause, a quiet architecture carved into orbit through repetition. As the rhythm settles into your senses, you know the experience holds further transformations. This balance of sight across fullness and emptiness only leads toward another phenomenon, one even more elusive, the alignment that will compress the entire system into a single line of light. You continue forward now, carrying the calm silence of the gap as you prepare to witness Saturn's rings collapse to their edge and disappear into geometry. One moment they stretch across your vision, wide and luminous, glowing belts of ice and dust circling the gas giant. The next, they begin to contract. Slowly, without a sound, the immense arcs that spanned an entire sky flatten and recede. You find yourself watching something impossible in appearance. Saturn's rings, hundreds of thousands of kilometers wide, shrinking until they resemble nothing more than a faint, thin stroke. What once filled space with brightness now narrows to nearly nothing. Your platform drifts into the correct position, carried along as Earth and Saturn approach alignment. Their orbits bring both worlds into a straight line with the Sun, and here above the planet, your vantage becomes exact. The shadowed side grows sharper, the illumination angles change, and the geometry of the system reveals its one rare trick. You understand this from knowledge. Every so often, when the Sun shines directly along Saturn's equator, the rings are seen edge-on. You may already know their breadth, their thickness, their immense size, yet when they tilt opposite you by this alignment, all that remains visible is their edge. A quiet worry takes hold. The eye is not designed for something this counterintuitive. How can something that extends wider than the distance from Earth to its own moon simply vanish? If the richness of the entire arc disappears under one alignment, how much else in the universe depends only on angle, perspective, and timing? The mind resists at first. The thought stirs unease, as though trusted size could be undone by shifting only degrees of tilt. You feel the scale of space in sharper contrast, realizing how much of what is seen depends on how line of sight crosses plane. Slowly, the reality stabilizes. The division is neither erasure nor destruction, but simple orientation. Viewed edge-on, the rings carry immense spread across length, yet almost no measurable thickness. Large as they are across distance, they rise barely tens of meters in vertical depth through much of their structure. Against the black of space, this near-flat form has no face to reflect light broadly. Instead, it presents only a hair-thin edge, a razor of brightness if sunlight strikes it at all. Aligned this way, the rings offer no broad surface for scattering light. They contract into lines thin as threads seen against the dark. The platform floats while your eyes track the transition. Each passing minute reduces visibility further. Thick belts become faint strands, then a single glowing edge running outward into infinity. You imagine holding a sheet of paper and tilting it until you see only the side. That comparison still exaggerates the ring's width. To your view now, they are thinner, almost beyond perception. From Earth, they can disappear entirely, lost against background sky. This is what astronomers on the ground observe every 15 years or so, when ring plane crossings reach alignment. To them, telescopes reveal Saturn as a planet stripped of its crown, carrying only a line or two hardly visible. The next such crossing on March 23, 2025 will remain hidden for much of the world, Saturn lying too close to the Sun to let instruments frame the edge. Observers must wait until 2038 for a view more favorable. Still, the geometry exists regardless of visibility. Here in your imagined orbit, you see what Earthbound watchers crave, a full system pulled into extreme perspective. The ring plane has flattened into impossibly narrow streamers, and every fragment you passed earlier, clusters, ribbons, ridges, all have vanished into geometry, compressed by angle into lines without depth. The effect is not only in sight, but in sensation. The light itself changes. With fewer reflective surfaces facing the sun, the glow lessens. A hush falls across the vision, where minutes ago scattered pulses flickered across ice, where arcs shone in crescendos and shadows. Now there is restraint. A persistent strand alone remains, stretching across your eyes without variance. For the first time, Saturn's rings give no illusion of storm, sea, or fabric. They appear more minimal than even logic predicted, a single line against emptiness. You pause to let your eyes adjust. When the broad surfaces vanish, the background stars reclaim prominence. Points from far galaxies shine brighter in absence of scattered ice. Between planet and cosmos lies nothing but that one drawn edge, striking in its frailness. This is perhaps the greatest surprise. That weakness in sight creates clarity in mind. The rings do not overwhelm when compressed. Instead, they point back toward surrounding dark, and dark takes on dominance again. Your worry eases now. What seemed the loss of grandeur becomes something else. The immensity has not disappeared, it remains, only hidden by tilt. This is not vanishing, but transformation. The world of fragments and arcs exists still, circling unbroken, regulating particles, scattering light where geometry allows. From Earth, astronomers know this truth, that appearance changes, but the system itself does not. From here, you accept it more deeply. The ring plane crossing does not erase Saturn's masterpiece, but briefly edits it into minimalist form, a reminder of impermanence and relativity seen from certain angles only. Each breath now matches the patience of the display. You do not rush to force perspective back. Allowing the narrow edge to stay dominates awareness with calm. Nothing distracts, nothing shifts in sudden blaze. The hum you felt earlier beneath the platform continues steady, underlying the sight with rhythm. In that rhythm, the minimal display takes on importance of its own. What is broad can contract. What is complex can hide in simple reduction. What is brightest can fade for a time, waiting only for angle to reveal again. Few on Earth experience this with the eye alone. The alignments occur only twice in decades, and often without good position for viewing. Yet here, as your platform holds station, you become witness to the transformation few glimpses provide. You see Saturn's rings not only in fullness, but also skeleton, structures folded to narrow edges as light permits no more thickness. The grandeur of billions of reflective shards contracts, compressed into the most slender geometry visible to perception. Instead of loss, you realize revelation. The ring system is not one form, but many, dependent on angle. The scene holds for minutes, maybe longer, before the perspective of drift begins to shift once again. Angle will ease, broadening surfaces gradually. Already you anticipate sparkles returning, arcs widening once more into visible belts. But memory seals itself here. One of Saturn's most elusive displays has been seen, a compression into quiet minimalism that holds value equal to grandeur. Your path now leads outward. Past the faint edges, other features await. Small moons, bright spheres, and orange worlds with thick haze draw attention beyond the rings themselves. The platform carries you forward, leaving behind the narrow line of ice that just spanned the planet's equator. Ahead lies Enceladus, Titan, and others still, each waiting in orbit with phenomena different from the narrowing geometry you have just witnessed. Ahead of you, a pale world comes into view, glimmering against the black of Saturn's realm. Unlike Titan's orange haze or the shadowy structure of the ring plane, this moon shows no color other than stark white. Sunlight reflects from its icy surface so cleanly that it shines brighter than any object around it. As your platform nears, you notice the most surprising detail of Enceladus, not its size, not its smooth plains, but the streams that rise above its southern hemisphere. Jets of material erupt upward in steady fountains, breaking the stillness of space with ongoing release. They arch into the dark before spreading wide, scattering in trails. This small sphere projects so much into the emptiness that it seems alive in motion, expelling its own material into Saturn's system. It resembles a snowball, spitting fine particles into space, an image at once silent and dynamic. The closer you approach, the more these plumes appear as steady fountains rather than sudden blasts. Particles stream outward in dense sheets, racing away only slowly, dispersing over many miles. Each geyser rises above fractures etched into the moon's crust, lines often called tiger stripes for their long parallel markings. These wide cracks produce not gas alone, but a mixture of water vapor and icy grains. At first glance, the sight prompts questions. Do such eruptions threaten danger? Could their force push debris into the platform's path with enough strength to endanger your calm journey? The truth relieves instead of alarms. These plumes, though carrying force, move gently in the vacuum. Time slows their influence until particles drift like snow on a nearly windless day. Tiny grains scatter outward, joining a great arc of ice that contributes to Saturn's E-ring, a faint, extended band circling outward from the planet. The E-ring exists because Enceladus feeds it continuously. Even as material escapes into space, the Moon itself remains stable, renewing its contribution with every eruption. Your platform slides among the spreading grains, untouched by any sudden collision. What was hazard in imagination becomes spectacle in reality. This phenomenon carries greater significance than its visual beauty. A spacecraft named Cassini discovered the plumes decades ago and studied them in detail. Flying close, it detected more than water. Traces of salts, organics, and unusual molecules joined the mix. Together they reveal not just frozen vapor, but a chemical sample drawn from within the Moon itself. The eruption is not random ice, but a direct outflow of its subsurface ocean. Each plume is an escape valve, venting evidence of a world beneath, liquid water beneath a frozen surface, warmed by tides from Saturn's immense pull. Cassini's instruments provided insight into this environment, showing that essential components for life, salts, organic molecules, liquid water, and energy, exist within Enceladus. The research reshaped exploration. From then on, ocean worlds became focus points in searching where microbial life could survive away from Earth. You hover close enough now to imagine the interior. Beneath tens of kilometers of solid ice, an ocean stretches across the global surface. Heat from friction, caused by the Moon's flexing under Saturn's gravity, keeps this ocean liquid. Cracks in the crust make direct channels where ocean water meets vacuum, expressed as plumes high enough to escape gravity. Thus, every jet surrounding your platform begins not on the surface but far below. In truth, you are experiencing samples of an alien ocean suspended in orbit. Every grain brushing past has traveled from underground seas hidden beneath the crust, emerging into sunlight only recently. Each particle drifting into space acts as a clue, a message from depths rarely glimpsed elsewhere in the solar system. Enceladus itself, though bright, is small compared to many moons. Its diameter measures barely 500 kilometers across, roughly the size of a large metropolitan region on Earth. Despite its modest scale, what it holds beneath makes it as important for science as worlds larger than Mercury. The reflective surface, bright because of fresh ice falling continuously back from plumes, hides a system that may be active, circulating, chemically varied. This combination elevates Enceladus beyond simple rock and ice. For researchers past and present, it is a primary candidate when discussing habitability beyond Earth. From the platform, you witness effects firsthand. Fine snow settles softly on unseen paths, a glacial mist filling the near space. The particles drift slowly enough that eyes can follow their paths one by one, trailing arcs faint against the far black. At moments, the scene resembles a gentle swarm of fireflies, catching and scattering sunbeams as they rotate. What reaches your body and platform is a fraction of the fountain, just a few of the billions of fragments expelled every second. Yet proximity makes it overwhelming. You are drifting directly through an environment crafted by the Moon itself. As awareness deepens, a realization forms. Every speck that brushes near was once liquid, buried under a frozen crust. In essence, you drift inside Enceladus's subsurface ocean, scattered upward into fragments smaller than sand grains. The jets are not hazards, but invitations to glimpse an environment normally sealed beneath unbroken ice. A world beneath surface pressure opens itself casually, releasing its components into surrounding orbits. You stand within that release, immersed silently in alien ocean spray, suspended as skyborne snow. The significance resonates further. Life as known on Earth relies on water, energy, and chemistry. Enceladus provides those three elements. Organs and salts discovered among the plumes demonstrate complex processes. Heat from tidal flexing shows energy is ongoing, and even now, water surrounds your path in fractioned fragments drifting free. Standing within this fallout brings the evidence closer than any diagram or number can. Instead of analyzing values, you simply experience. Each drifting ice speck is an ocean's molecule, freed into orbit by forces larger than imagination. This moon's contribution extends well beyond its own existence. The E-ring, faint band visible in Saturn's greater system, owes its existence largely to Enceladus. That entire structure is fed not by ancient remnants alone, but by active release happening continuously. The moon, though small, reshapes Saturn's system through patient expelling of its content. Snow it expels will recycle, falling on Saturn or its other moons. Through it all, Enceladus maintains its cycle, hiding ocean depths while revealing them piece by piece. As the jets drift and fade farther in the distance, you sense calm returning. The platform continues outward past shimmering grains dispersed thinly into darkness. Behind you lies the ocean world, still erupting silently into black, sharing its secret in ongoing fountains. Its modest size, deceptive brightness, and hidden ocean remain behind as reminder of how even the smallest sphere can hold one of the grandest secrets. A subsurface ocean with nearly every requirement for life. Before you stretches another moon, wholly unlike this bright one. Larger, hazed, and dimly orange-tinted, Titan now emerges into your field, drawing the imagination forward. Where Enceladus offered openness, Titan conceals. Beneath thick atmosphere lie rivers, lakes, and a chemistry still unexplored. You leave the snowfall of Enceladus behind and prepare to approach Saturn's most mysterious giant. Unlike any other moon you've seen so far, this one hides itself completely. Instead of a clear, icy shell, instead of a bright, reflective crust, Titan rises as a globe wrapped in a blanket of haze. From this distance, it appears swollen and blurred, a sphere the color of muted amber, as though the surface resists direct eyes. No mountains, no craters, no rivers present themselves yet. Only the thick orange atmosphere, glowing faintly, presses into view, making Titan look more like a small planet than a moon. As your platform closes the gap, the atmosphere grows denser in sight. It swallows details, blurring every outline. You know there must be surface beneath, but all visual connection is stolen by methane clouds suspended high. This smoggy veil drifts in layers, soft enough to glow yet dense enough to keep secret what lies below. Suspense builds in the mind. What landscapes are hidden beneath? Are there flat deserts of ice or networks of channels shaped by liquid? The orange screen reveals only uncertainty. Then the truth becomes known. Titan holds not dry plains or static rock, but an active world of weather. Its skies generate rain, not of water as familiar on Earth, but of methane. droplets condense from upper layers, fall in long silent arcs, and scatter across the ground below. Rivers cut channels where that methane has run, guiding currents into basins that now host seas. These are not symbolic seas imagined in myth. They are literal seas of hydrocarbons stretching wide, dark, and calm. Some rival entire oceans back home in their reach, while others stand as smaller clustered lakes arranged into archipelago-like groups at high latitudes. You picture the raindrops now, drifting slowly through Titan's thick air. Each drop takes longer than on Earth to fall because gravity here is weaker and atmosphere denser. By the time droplets reach the alien ground, they ripple across collections of pooled methane, producing rings of disturbance just as rainfall does across water. Concentric patterns widen, vanish, then widen again as other drops join. Entire lakes ripple under this gentle rain, their surfaces renewed regularly by repeated cycles. Without seeing it directly from this height, you allow imagination to make the scene clear, distant lakes glowing black, their edges dotted with ripples from a constant drizzle, unlike any storm you've known. Such features establish Titan as more familiar than icy Enceladus. They remind you of young Earth, where liquid reshaped terrain, atmospheres, cycled fluids, and chemistry accumulated over eons. The surprise here is in content. On Titan, the water is frozen solid, forming bedrock rather than liquid seas. Instead, methane and ethane, hydrocarbons familiar as fuels on Earth, stand in as substitutes for water. Frozen water becomes rock, while flowing methane takes the role of rain and river. The entire hydrological cycle of Earth is mirrored here, but with chemistry inverted. The significance of this world goes further. Planned for the coming decades, an exploration known as the Dragonfly mission will send a rotorcraft to Titan's surface. The vehicle aims to travel across multiple sites through powered flight, sampling surface and atmosphere for evidence of complex chemistry. Titan provides not biology, but chemistry in motion, where organic molecules can interact, combine, and restructure in ways echoing the earliest stages before life emerged on Earth. The thick atmosphere, gentle winds, and reduced gravity make flight possible, allowing exploration beyond what a rover might accomplish crawling across frozen terrain. Among the many regions worth focus, Selk Crater stands apart. It is one of Titan's large impact scars, where an asteroid once struck the surface with enough energy to create temporary pools. Heat from that collision melted ice, producing localized liquid water in the past. For centuries, perhaps tens of thousands of years, these pools mixed meltwater with dissolved organic material raining from the atmosphere. Such mixtures form natural laboratories where building blocks might test themselves in combinations. Even if conditions today are frozen and quiet, traces of that chemistry may still cling to the landscape. You imagine the surface at Selk Crater now, though hidden by haze from here. Solid water ice hardened into rock-like strength, fractured along rims of the basin. Nearby sediments of darker color coat low areas, sticky with hydrocarbons, settled out of atmosphere. The past pools are long gone, ice returned to rigidity. But remnants of complex organics may linger, compounds formed under impact heat that mimic pathways toward cell-like possibilities. It is here that exploration may one day uncover clues to chemistry that existed long before Earth's biology matured. Through this haze, Titan draws constant comparison to worlds familiar yet surreal. Imagine standing on its actual surface. Towering dunes stretch across equatorial regions, ridged by wind that steadily pushes grains of organic sand. At higher latitudes, black seas glisten quietly, their shorelines shaped into curves by repeating waves of methane. Skies hang dim, only a small fraction of sunlight reaching through the haze, bathing the world in twilight during daytime. Clouds drift slowly, faintly colored by orange atmosphere, shifting across horizon like veils. Each feature resembles Earth in function, but repels comfort in composition. Air is thick, liquid runs, rain falls, but chemistry transforms landscape into something alien. What makes Titan feel alive is not the presence of creatures, but the persistence of cycles. Rain falls, fills seas, evaporates again into orange sky. Winds carve dunes, relocate sand, leave one desert smaller while another expands. Energy persists from solar input and Saturn's faint gravitational pull. The repetition creates change measured in geological time. Standing above, imagining detail through haze, you realize this is no static ball of rock. It is a stage with processes ongoing, rhythms that sustain without pause. You note how different the two moons feel. Enceladus erupted its secrets openly, fountains venting ocean material straight into space. Titan, in contrast, conceals. Thick air acts as barrier, forcing you to visualize rather than view, leaving surface hidden and mysterious. Yet the effect of concealment provides even deeper intrigue. Where one moon showers space with fragments, this one locks them beneath haze, offering signs only through instruments and indirect discovery. The mood between them diverges, straightforward revelation against patient mystery. The lesson Titan offers is unmistakable. It is not simply a lifeless satellite frozen forever. Its chemistry is active, its surface sculpted by familiar yet alien processes. It resembles Earth's deep past, at a time when biology had not yet risen, but chemistry prepared the way. In Titan's shadowy tones lives a reminder of what may precede familiar life cycles. It demonstrates potential, not outcome. Your platform moves slowly past the orange haze, but the presence lingers even after distance grows. The sense remains that Titan conceals not barren emptiness, but an entire system, a chemical balancing act that echoes the first steps of Earth. As rings of Saturn re-emerge in your view, their arcs bright once again, you carry forward this perspective. You leave Titan behind and return attention to broader rhythms, the pull of gravity guiding motion, and the play of light that continues across fragments scattering in orbit. Without rockets or effort, your platform still moves smoothly along Saturn's curve. You sense motion, yet no engines hum, no thrusters burn. The descent you expect never comes. Instead of being pulled hard toward the planet's immense body, you remain balanced in orbit. This is the quiet paradox of gravity here, overwhelming in strength yet delicate in execution, shaping every movement without struggle. You exist as if carried inside invisible streams, shepherded without a sound or sign of force. The giant world beneath draws everything toward itself, but because you match its pull with orbital speed, you do not fall. The sensation is one of floating perfectly above its swirling clouds, while time stretches on without interruption. At first, the mind struggles with the idea. On Earth, gravity anchors you to the ground. Drop an object, and it falls directly downward. Here, no floor stops you, no fixed surface waits below. Your body expects a similar fate. The platform must inevitably drop into Saturn's depths, disappearing into the storm bands. Yet each passing moment proves otherwise. The orbit holds steady. You slide across the arc of Saturn's curve, tracing its invisible geometry. There is no descent at all, only a smooth path drawn by balance between speed and pull. The absence of falling feels unnatural, until slowly you accept it as the new form gravity takes here. This orbital free fall is not weightlessness in the way of ignorance or escape. It is weight shared, everything around you moving together at the same pace so that relative to one another, all stays suspended. The particles of the rings follow the same principle. Each fragment is pulled constantly downward toward Saturn, yet each moves forward with speed enough to stay aloft. Together, their endless free fall produces the thin plane sprawling around the planet. Your platform joins the same orchestra, following a path already traced countless times. In this rhythm, you find comfort. The greatest of forces, that which could crush mountains on Earth, has become a gentle cradle rather than an oppression. Imagine drifting as a leaf floats down a river. The current does the work, carrying without exertion. The leaf may wobble or tilt, but it needs no strength to continue. Here, Saturn's gravity functions as such a current. It pulls, but it does so with perfect balance, guiding everything into smooth paths, circling endlessly. Your platform, like the leaf, feels no strain. There's no sense of effort, no emphasis of propulsion. What remains is unbiased float, both inevitable and soothing. Where a river's current produces sound as it rushes between stones, Saturn's current moves in silence, a stream of space unseen, yet more pervasive than any noise. As you drift farther, you feel how moons add their subtle influence. Though distant, they perturb the flow, nudging ring edges, tightening some corridors, widening others, always in delicate repetition. Their pulls create structure where none might otherwise remain. When moonlets pass, their presence drives slight waves into the plane, curving pathways, even carving gaps broad enough to appear as divisions circling the planet. Your orbit, too, feels their influence, not as an interruption, but as a variation added to Saturn's command. The great world dominates, but its attendants sculpt texture, making the gravitational field less uniform, more alive in constant detail. It is not one single force, but a network of pulls and balances, all aligned without chaos. The hum you sensed earlier seems to link here. The steady resonance of Saturn's electromagnetic voice becomes companion to these gravitational actions. Together, they produce a dual rhythm, vibration from within, mixed with orbital curves surrounding the planet. Your platform synchronizes unconsciously, matching both alike without resistance. Breathing in feels guided by one rhythm, exhaling follows the other. What earlier seemed coincidence now feels necessary. That vibration, that pull, combining quietly. Gravity keeps you in place, the hum sets pace, and together they orchestrate calm. The pull never rests, yet it never overwhelms. This realization expands in thought as you remain above the curve. Unlike oppressive weight at home, where bodies strain against resistance, here, the same force ensures your path without lending strain to your limbs or platform. The word fall becomes meaningless where everything falls together and never lands. Instead, words like guide and cradle feel closer to the truth. Saturn holds nothing back in strength, yet what you experience is gentleness, immense power transformed into something steady and reassuring. Looking back at the ring particles, you see this principle mirrored countless times. Grain after grain remains in orbit because of the same balance you share. Fragments as small as sand and blocks as large as houses circle together, none colliding in chaos but instead flowing along predetermined paths. Each follows Saturn's command at scale appropriate to them, pulled always, yet free always. If any drift slightly off, they are returned, pressed into rhythm. Their endurance across eons shows that what you feel tonight is no fleeting sensation, but a consistent truth. Saturn's pull ensures order lasting far greater than human lifespans. The thought of falling loses fear. Once terrifying, the prospect of being dragged downward becomes impossible within balance. You begin to imagine Saturn not as captor, but as host. Rings, moons, and your platform alike flow as companions bound by kindness rather than threat. Gravity proves here to be the mechanism not of loss, but of protection. It keeps you aligned, bathed steadily in light glimmers, kept always at distance, safe from storms. In drifting, you learn that gravity is no longer a harsh reminder of limits, but a constant reassurance of belonging. Time fades while you remain within this orchestration. In orbital drift, there is nothing pressing to correct. The platform needs no steering. There are no decisions about path, no interruptions in direction. All is carried forward by invisible channels, regulated by equations too consistent to fail. You rest deeper within this knowledge, no longer questioning when or where. Everything is already set, already arranged by laws beyond sight. You have only to exist within them, and existence aligns to calm. Sooner or later, every sensation bends toward balance. The gentle pull becomes background, barely noticed. What once dominated thought fades into reassurance only. You no longer perceive Saturn's mass as risk, but as foundation. The effect is not unlike lying back in water, realizing how buoyancy holds you without effort. At first, tension resists, demanding control, but with time, tension releases, and you float for as long as you allow. Saturn's cradle repeats the experience endlessly. Awareness begins to narrow, guided by a harmony of drift and hum. With every curve traced along the planet's body, you align deeper. The weight of thought grows as light as the absence of gravity felt. You prepare to let silence dominate next, not broken by hum, not structured by drift, but complete stillness awaiting you beyond. Saturn's guidance carries you toward that last threshold, a quiet as broad as the rings and as deep as dreams. After drifting so long among Saturn's rings, a question rises quietly in your thoughts. Are you still just a visitor watching from the outside, or have you been drawn fully into the motion, claimed by the same cycles that govern every fragment here? The body provides part of the answer. Your breathing no longer feels separate from the rhythm. Each inhale follows the slow hum of Saturn. Each exhale drifts outward with a soft scattering of reflected light. What began as observation has become participation. You are no longer simply above the rings. You are joined in the movement that holds them in orbit. Your platform does not mark difference anymore. There is no contrast between you and the field of drifting particles. With every passing hour, pulse and hum, light and silence, body and orbit reveal alignment. The rings flicker softly below, pulsing like a slow heartbeat. Saturn's inaudible resonance hums in your chest, low and constant. The body begins to imitate cycles larger than itself, tracing outward to encompass ice, scattering across thousands of kilometers. For once, boundaries blur. You feel awareness slide outward from limits of skin into currents that hold moons, rings, and the planet alike. A part of you resists with the lingering question. Belonging is not given easily when visiting alien skies, yet gravity makes no distinction. It holds platform, human, and ice fragment in equal strength. Where the Earth once kept you anchored, Saturn now claims you equally with particles released from moons and ice grains circling since before history began. To orbit here is not to stand apart. It is to join a cycle already ages old, already complete in rhythm. The cycle reveals itself first through Enceladus. You recall how its jets rose in fountains, scattering droplets upward into space. Those droplets became ring material, feeding the faint E-ring and dispersing outward. What lifted from an ocean beneath ice now becomes part of the planetary system, traced into arcs visible across skies. Some particles remain for entire orbits, caught by gravity into broad belts. Others drift inward, slowly falling toward the planet, fueling atmospheric chemistry through what scientists name ring rain. Even now, some fraction of what touched your fingertips drifts downward, destined to merge at last with Saturn itself. The cycle does not begin and end in one motion. It repeats endlessly. Ice scatters, feeds the rings, then falls onto Saturn's atmosphere. The planet consumes slowly what began as seas within Moon. A quiet circulation of water, organics, and frozen salts repeats without conclusion, more patient than any human sense of time. Motion you witnessed in minutes extends into centuries. To belong here is not to stand separate, but to accept that you, too, are part of the circulation, folded invisibly into flows of gravity. Other moons add texture to the pattern. Some shepherd edges of the rings, carving narrow paths at boundaries. Their repeated tugs draw structure into what might otherwise collapse. Each moon writes its own influence, yet together the orbits weave into balance. Cassini, the spacecraft that once orbited here, ended its mission by diving into Saturn's atmosphere directly. That final act was chosen to prevent chance collision with moons like Titan or Enceladus, places that remain untouched laboratories where hidden chemistry still works. In preserving them, it acknowledged the same pattern you now sense, that moons and rings together form a system alive with cycling energy, not isolated stones circling aimlessly. Your senses return full circle now as memory threads itself across experience. You saw the glimmers of icy fragments, light scattered in pulses, soft enough to lull thought into calm. You felt ice grains brush your fingertips, cool and ancient, small contacts joining personal touch with planetary history. You heard Saturn's resonance, vibrations shifted into sound that sank into chest and lungs as though becoming heartbeat. Together, these sensations form no random list. They echo, creating unity, showing how each sense shares the same language of rhythm. The motif of touch returns most strongly. Those faint brushes of frozen particles seemed temporary at first, fleeting snowflakes against skin. But they continue now as symbol. Each grain did not only meet your hand, it reminded you of the same rhythm within yourself, like a pulse, appearing and vanishing, returning again as cycle without end. In stillness later, you notice your heartbeat repeating the same cadence, soft strikes, pauses, strikes again, never ceasing. Particles brushing fingertips join pulse, join hum, join light. They are not outside expressions, they are extensions of life itself. The boundaries that separated external from internal have thinned. No longer does the platform carry you apart from environment. Instead, you drift as an element equal to the rest, orbit sustained by gravity, pulse by rhythm, consciousness by alignment. Through repetition, the distinction between observer and participant fades until only one motion remains, the dance itself. You realize there is no onlooker. To exist above Saturn is to join the movement, to circle as rings circle, to hum as planet hums, to reflect light as particles reflect it. Belonging is not granted. It is already present, already proven by orbit. The dance itself is older than human origin. It has persisted for millions of years, maybe longer. Perhaps one day Saturn's rings will scatter or vanish, particles drawn into planet. Perhaps geysers from Enceladus will end when its surface hardens without heat. But in this span of time for now, the dance continues without falter. It includes fragments, gases, moons, hum, and you. All align moment to moment inside the same gravitational score. This realization does not carry drama or sudden climax. Instead, it eases tension. The thought of boundaries disappearing makes rest easier, not harder. If hum equals heartbeat, if particles equal pulse, then you are never alone above Saturn. You remain companion to cycles beyond measure, joined into fabric of gravity and light, too large to resist. Continuity itself is comfort. Sleep follows not from withdrawal, but from unions. Eyes drift closed slowly as rhythm continues without interruption. Light glimmers fade to memory. Hum sinks deeper into subconscious. Pressure evaporates into weightlessness. The motion carries you without demand, turning observation into presence, presence into alignment, alignment into rest. Saturn continues its circulation, moons turn, rings scatter reflection, all whether you watch or not. Already you have stopped watching. Already you have become part of the dance. The orbit carries you forward but self-dissolves into rhythm. Gravity holds steady. Silence expands. Ahead lies only conclusion, where vision rests and thought finds stillness. The platform drifts onward toward final pause, guiding gently into the closing image. Saturn's rings show themselves as more than frozen fragments. They shift, recycle, and renew, carrying water, organics, and salts through cycles that never pause. Moons feed them, Saturn draws them inward, and the process repeats without end. What seems static from far away is actually alive with change, measured in quiet centuries. Carry this calm into your night. Let the steady rhythm of Saturn guide your breathing as you rest. Picture yourself circling endlessly above the giant, weight held by gentle gravity. You are already part of this silent ballet, drifting forever in its graceful orbit.